If you see every day as a blessing, you will feel a much calmer, stronger center so that nothing rocks you. It's in your movie because it's here to make you become a version of yourself that you're proud to be.
From To Be Magnetic, this is the Expanded Podcast with your host, Lacey Phillips.
And your host, Jessica Gill.
As the leading destination for neural manifestation, we dispel the woo-woo in order to help you create real, tangible results based on neuroplasticity, psychology, epigenetics, and energetics. Our goal is to normalize the practice of manifestation and empower you to get into the driver's seat of your life in order to manifest the experiences, relationships, and things that most align with your authenticity. And by pressing play, the process begins.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Expanded. Jessica here. I am so excited for today's guest. She is a huge fan favorite of Expanded. She has been on numerous times. Human design expert Jenna Zoe. I am so excited to have Jenna back on again because she has been sharing so much wisdom around the new paradigm. If you haven't heard of the new paradigm, it's this new energetic turnover that's happening in 2027, different cycles of life. And there's so much potential, and I'm noticing it in so many people of the community's manifestation practices, where you're being pushed to your growth edge, what's being called of you to step into, how to be in integrity with oneself, accountable to your own word, how to honor yourself in a new way and really bolster your self-worth. If you haven't listened to any of the earlier episodes with Jenna, just going on the basics of human design, we're going to link those in the show notes so you could go back and check out those earlier expanded episodes. And if you want to check out what your chart is like, go to myhumandesign.com, fill out your information for your birth chart, and they will show you exactly what authority and type you are there as well. Couple of fun TBM updates. So we have been, especially after last week's episode, inundated with people asking for us to extend the summer challenge. One note I just wanted to make of why we time block these challenges is because we found that when we time block them, it not only gets more people collectively to be doing them together, which in turn creates better results for you guys and more effective results for you guys, but it also allows people to finish them. We found before when it was just open and left there, people wouldn't actually go through and complete it. So the time blocking is actually for your benefit, so you are able to actually complete the thing, have the highest chance of completion, and the highest chance of the biggest effective change on the other side. But we don't want to leave you guys hanging, especially if a bunch of you are in the middle of it. So we are going to be extending our summer challenge about finding your biggest block. It will be another 6 weeks starting Monday, and it'll be closing on October 14th. So if you haven't got a chance to dive into that challenge, if you are facing those big core wounds narratives that you're needing to step through to connect with your authenticity, if you have a lot of actions, aligned actions that you're not able to do, you're procrastinating, putting them off, if you need help with your nervous system, this is the challenge for you. You guys have another 6 weeks. And if you've already completed the challenge, please let us know how your experience was. We want to get better and better and better at crafting these challenges. So give us your feedback. Let us know what worked, what didn't work, what you want to see more of, what you enjoyed the best, what you manifested, and if you want this to become a permanent workshop in the Pathway membership. You can find that survey linked in the show notes.
And now, a word from our partners.
Since going through this summer's To Be Magnetic challenge, I've been really focusing on how I can take care of myself even deeper for the rest of this summer. So for me, that looks like a lot of time outside in the sun, in water, daily nature hikes, some strength training to keep my muscles strong, and taking my supplements to make me feel my best, especially ones that support my gut. I've noticed a huge correlation that when my gut is in good health, so is the rest of my body. And that is why I love taking Seed's DSO1 Daily Symbiotic. It is a 24-strain pre- and probiotic that helps benefit your gut, your skin, your heart in just 2 little capsules per day. I will take mine first thing in the morning with a cup of lemon water right before I take our pup Theo out for a little nature walk. I notice a huge difference in my regularity. I'm able to go to the bathroom more regularly, which is a key sign of good gut health and good digestion. Why I love Seed versus any other probiotic on the market is one, they are the most science-backed. They have so many trials and research behind why they put every single strain in there and creating the capsule formula in order to make sure it goes to the right part of the digestive tract to actually make an impact on the bacteria that is in your gut. And it is also the most sustainable. All their packaging is completely compostable. They have a refillable glass jar that they just give you monthly packaging for. So it is really the best of the best. If you are looking to support your gut this summer, you can try Seed's DS-01 Daily Symbiotic. Go to seed.com/magnetic and use the code 25magnetic to get 25% off your first month. Again, that is code 25magnetic, MAGNETIC, all caps to get 25% off your first month.
All right, on to the episode.
So good to have you back. One spot I want to start with because I think it is so important right now. And also, like, even I was talking to friends who are doing human design and adding like all the insights to their daily life. They hadn't heard about your new paradigm workshop in your app and all the juicy nuggets that are coming from that and all the wisdom. I am definitely someone who, when the concept and the idea of the new paradigm came out a few years back, the dialogue around it in the spiritual community felt like two things. A little bit of escapism, like, oh, let's think about this thing that's happening in the future because the new paradigm's coming, none of this matters. And then there was also this sense of like, I don't have to worry about cleaning up my side of the street because it'll all be taken care of for me in the new paradigm. So it was like spiritual bypass. So I tuned out. I was like, I'm not really gonna like invest time and energy into that. But when I heard your workshops and I heard you talk about it on your socials too, I was like, wait, this is so fascinating, so applicable for the now. For someone who is like, what the heck is the new paradigm? Where did this come from? Where did this concept come from? Can you give a little background on that? And yeah, we'll go into so much more.
So it's really amazing because I know exactly what you mean, where people are saying, oh, well, we're ascending into 5D and it's all going to be love and light and none of this is going to matter anyway. And yes, that's such an ungrounded sort of perspective. And I feel like for some people, we need to know the cogs behind why people say that. So the founder of Human Design said this when he was first channeling the information in 1987, that there are different cycles that humanity moves through and each one kind of layers on top of the other. So it's not even necessarily that one is quote unquote better than the other. Some of the ways that we have to be now, we have created positive expressions of them and we've created negative expressions of them. And when the new paradigm, when the cycle changes, which is in 2027, there will be a different kind of theme that we have to collectively focus on. So imagine every single person on this planet has a specific karma, but we all have a collective karma too. And there are different pockets of life that we are all tasked with exploring. So since 1615, which is the beginning of this cycle, the emphasis has really been on building, right? So building constitutions, institutions, companies, globalization, systems that, span across the whole world. And again, wherever we have done that with positive consciousness will remain in the future. And wherever that has been sort of not for our best because it was done from a place of control or lack or fear, trotting on other people to get our way, those are the things that we're now seeing are being removed. And the first video that I made about this on my website, that was in 2018. I think it's my favorite video I ever made because everything I've said in that video, I'm like freaked out now when I listen to it because I'm like, oh, this all became true. Because as we come to the end of any cycle, everything that needs to go gets heightened. You know, when you're like around your Saturn return and then everything comes to a point, you know what I mean? It's like peaks. This is where we are now, right? So since basically 2012 to 2027, there's been a faster speed up of, okay, we need to actually just make everything crumble that you can't bring into the new world. And so one of the things about the new paradigm is that where this one has had so much of a focus on the collective, the new paradigm is going to have, the next cycle, I should say, is going to have a focus on the individual. So it's much more about like, what do you want to do with your life, your sovereignty, you becoming, we're already seeing now people making whole brands around themselves. However, what's one of the tasks that comes with that is you have to take full responsibility. No one's coming to save you. You can't blame it on the government. You can't blame it on your mother. You can't blame it on anything. If you really want to make the most of this new paradigm, it has to be completely on you. And that's the part that I think we're finding scary, but also life, by crumbling all our support systems around us, is making it easier for us to do / forcing us to do.
Well, it's interesting too, because I think when you think about going internally and being that sovereign being for yourself, how that impacts community, how that impacts the collective, how that impacts, it's almost like a different way of approaching impacting us as a society. Whereas like before, it was like building on these structures and maybe keeping everyone contained in certain ways. And now it's like, okay, let everyone go to their fullest potential of genius, everything that's in their design, let them live their full purpose, unencumbered, without the limiting beliefs, all of those things. And if someone does that, what society do we create? What evolution do we create at that point?
Absolutely. And that's one of the big mature spiritual understandings to keep with us, is that everything that we've currently built, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So there are good applications of, listen, we need people in government because we can't not have a government. And why? Because there are certain people whose gift is being able to advocate for people who are unable to advocate for themselves, people who justice comes very easily to them, who understand legal systems, like all of these things, but we just haven't seen them done in a positive enough way in enough times that we believe in that. But that's not a reason to be reactionary about out with the old, in with the new. It's like, oh no, we need to keep what we've built already and take it with us so that we're building on a larger foundation. So what you're saying about the individual is, yes, it's just now almost exploring the other thing that we can add on to something else. It's not better and it's not worse. It comes with its own positives and its own negatives. And in human design, there are 3 layers of energy. So you have tribal, you have personal, tribal, and collective. And so whatever cycles we go through, we just go through them over and over again, because that's how the slow evolution of humanity gets to its apex.
So how does this relate to, and this is a question, honestly, from one of our team members, of timeline jumping? So as we're getting towards 2027 and this new paradigm and this new energy that's going to kind of impact us in small ways and big ways, how is the time speeding up? I know you've talked about the gaps between time and space closing and moving faster. I've definitely felt that. And I've also felt when I make a decision for my highest good, like stepping through fear, making the decision out of my full integrity, even though it could be like so easy to, just say yes here, people please here, but like really making that conscious effort, things move really quick. Like I'm rewarded very quickly, a manifestation comes through or something kismet from the universe comes through. But where I'm settling, or I know I need to take an action, but I'm like dragging my feet, it feels like the pressure cooker is on. It's like I used to be able to just settle and it's like, oh, okay, whatever, I'll dress at some point in the future. Now it's like if you're settling, you can't unhear the ringing of like, you have to, make a change here. Like the pressure is on in those spaces.
The reason why that's happening is because the universe loves us so much and it wants us to move forward so quick. And so throughout history, if we were less able to connect something we did with the cause that it created, you would think that your actions don't really cost you that much. You'd be like, oh, well, I can just get away with this over here and no one's going to notice. The universe is always watching. But the important part to remember that is because we're at this pressure for the end of the cycle and there's more conscious people on this planet than there ever has been, because of the very fact that people have laid the groundwork of, that Maslow hierarchy of needs. Like our grandparents and our parents have done the work of getting food on the table, moving across the world, being refugees, like all of those things that we now can afford to do all this amazing stuff. So the universe is like, okay, you guys as a generation now, we're going to make this very freaking obvious so that you can tie the pieces together of you did this is what comes. And then you get to know exactly what it is, that the way that you paint on the canvas of life, even with your intentions, that nothing is going to cost you nothing.
So huge. How do you see integrity playing into it? Because we always talk about like our authentic code, these pillars of who we authentically are. And I think there's also this other layer. I have the integrity gate in my human design, the gift there. So I'm like, okay, I really feel this on a deep level. But for me, also, like I have sacral authority, generator. So I know that feels right. That doesn't feel right. And I remember podcast clients were like, should I just buy followers to just boost it for the time being? And I'm like, I have to say from like my gut feeling, if your goal is to build a community and you're starting off by putting bots in there, I think that energy is going to continue on going forward. And you're better off building slower, having less of a following than even energetically tapping into that at this stage in the game, because I feel like there's going to be that consequence on the other side, and not in a scary way, but in a like every decision has weight and we can't like take the easy way out. How do you see integrity playing out with all of this?
It's the most important thing to hold yourself to the highest standard that you can reach for today, because if your intentions are the sort of seed and the action is just the way that you demonstrate it, there are so many different combinations of what intention could be behind what action and vice versa. So it's not necessarily that if everyone makes this, then everyone will get that. And we're addicted to kind of having someone tell us that if we do this, we'll get that. And that's something we have to decondition from, right? Because we have to learn our own essence, basically. But purifying your intentions is such an important concept, and being in your integrity, because if you're buying bots because you have the intention of getting a quick fix, the universe is like, okay, well, you deep down as a soul need to learn to not need a quick fix. So how will I teach you that? By showing you a quote unquote negative ramification of when you try to do that. So it could be energetically correct for you to do something, but it would be energetically incorrect for me to do something, not only because it's not aligned in our human design, but also because of the reasons why we're doing it. So that's why, and I love what you said earlier of how you're seeing when you do something that's really, feels right to you, you see the results so much quicker and the manifestation comes through, because we've become accustomed so much to thinking it has to be so difficult. But I promise you right now, the universe is like desperate to find anyone whose light turns on, who's like, I'm in integrity, you can use me. And it's just like swirling around us all the time, being like, who can I funnel through? And so it's not even about us. It's not even about being special. It's not about anything. It's a simple mechanism of life, is that the universe is going to use the integrous people. And so it's almost the most selfish thing to do, but also the most selfless thing to do, to reframe every action you take as, this is a challenge for me to do the thing that is like a little bit hard and a little bit of a stretch. Let me see the like actual deep peace and reward that comes from when I make myself be my, we do talk about this a lot, be your inner parent. No, this is a time when you actually need to say the right thing and say no to the thing that is the shiny carrot or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's really powerful. And the parallels between this work and To Be Magnetic continue.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy. I think too, when I did my authentic code for our winter challenge last year, it's my top 4 gifts in human design. And I also didn't even realize like those 4 numbers were like primary gifts. Like I always just looked at like the long list. And after I crafted my authentic code, I went back, and people who know a little bit more about human design than I do were like, oh yeah, this part's really important. Like these are your primary ones. And I was like, okay, cool. And I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, these are all of the pillars of my authentic code. I think it's absolutely wild.
And I think that's one of the things that gives you a lot of clarity, is to understand that there is no one modality or system that is better. There's nothing that works more than other things. It's all about if the person is out of their own way enough to deliver something. Again, going back to integrity, like the biggest hack of all of this is just an attitude of service. What can you give to other people? And really truly doing it from a place of really connecting to what you're offering, because then you're out of your ego. You're not abusing your work to validate your own ego. You're not abusing your followers, your customers, to make you feel some sort of way, right? Mm-hmm. So you're not acting out of needing them to fill a void in you. You really get out of your own way and you really seek to deliver. And that's when the universe really genuinely can make you say things and do things that you couldn't have come up with in our small limited brains.
Well, it's so funny because we have a lot of entrepreneurs in our community and people who are building businesses. And we get a question of like, I know I want to do my own thing, but I don't know what that is. And maybe it's different for different design types. But For me as a generator, it's like a magnet. Like I'm compelled. I just can't stop thinking about it, talking about it. Even before working at TBM, I was telling everyone under the sun about it. I was trying to explain to them. I was like, yeah, but okay, like think about it from this way and this lens and blah, blah, blah. Like I just couldn't stop because I just had so much passion and love for it. And I think it's really hard for people who might have a little bit of that, or maybe they have shadow in the way where they feel like they can't fully step and speak into that with authority, or they have a myriad of different passions. What would you say for that person who's kind of like, okay, there's this new paradigm, I'm getting an integrity. What is my path of service? Like if it's all about what I'm doing, like how do I get in alignment with what I'm supposed to do on this planet to help serve?
Well, I think service is, we have such a narrow version of what that is. It's like you either have to be Mother Teresa or a guide or a healer to be of service. But think about the people that make your beautiful furniture and like how much that elevates like the space that you wake up in every day. So the consciousness of that person is either I want to elevate these people's physical experience because that reminds us or brings out a part of our essence, or it's like I want to quickly make money, so let me just sell the quick thing and overprice it so that people just buy it and let's make it a quick trend and then it's a smash and grab. That's a completely different consciousness. So you can make any job spiritual, and according to human design, there's almost like a conveyor belt of different roles that get churned out over the course of the year in terms of the incarnation crosses, which is the 4 gifts we're talking about, which is what tells you about your purpose in this life. And so it's all about understanding that you can serve anybody with the thing that you do, the thing you really love to do. How can you change your consciousness to approach it with the intention of serving people, with the intention of adding something good into this world? So like the net positive of this world goes up and you've done your contribution to it. Sometimes we think that we have to have the best calling in the world or we're nothing, right? And we go in between the two. But it's actually like, think about, you just have your role and everyone has their role. And your role is completely not better or worse than others. You just have a normal role, but you can just do your role really well.
Yeah. Now, even you say furniture, there are certain brands where I'm so loyal to them because you can feel that energy coming off of what they're putting into the pieces. They're so craftsman, like every step of the process, they want to educate you on the materials and where they came from and how they're crafting the wood and how you can use it for your family for years on end. You can feel that from where you're purchasing, and it genuinely lights me up. And I don't know anything about furniture. That's the impact it's having on me and my space. And then if I'm in a good state, that impacts the work that I do. You know, like it's that trickle effect where everyone is going to impact everyone. I love the concept you had about the removing the scaffolding, because I think there's a little bit of needing that in order to see what our purpose potential could even be. Talk about this last workshop you put into your app too.
Yeah, so this idea of scaffolding is that, okay, we talk about neural pathways and stuff, but it's also that the way that we as human beings think that we can be is so limited. So if I spent a day in your body, my mind would be blown. I would be like, oh my God, there's a different way to think about my options. There's a different way to think about how I service a car. There's a different approach that I have to finding music on Spotify. Like, how do I approach getting a playlist? Like, even small things like that. And the longer we do the ones that we do, the less we see of the other approaches to life that there are. So think about someone who's very logical, who's used to black and white thinking. They've never even stepped a foot in a person who's so creative and sees all the different angles, but then maybe they can't be so logical. And our medicine would actually be to kind of just lean a little bit out of the crusty ways of approaching life that we've gotten so used to, but we can't even see them, right? So sometimes someone is like, it either has to be 100 or it has to be 0. And they've never ever thought about there could also be 50. Mm-hmm. And their brain, all we need to do is open up their brain to like, imagine if there's also a 50. And that's going to blow someone's brain off. But that's also how you expand your capacity to receive more of what the universe has. Because if you have blinkers on, the universe is not necessarily going to smash those blinkers. It's going to honor your blinkers, right? It wants to go at a pace that usually, unless we are massively rocked by the universe, usually it's going to honor where you're at in your life. And so the more you can expand yourself, the more it can come in for you. Back to the parallels here. But with purpose and stuff, one of the big things about this new paradigm is that we have to remember that what we have seen as vocations is not relevant to what kind of vocations are where we're going to. So the most amazing thing right now is that we only see really 5 to 10 versions of what a good career can be. And then we make ourselves go into those career paths because we tell ourselves that those are the only ways that we can have money or belonging or love or any of the things that we go for. But what we need to understand is that every human being has that worked into their fabric. We all have the guarantee that we have and are worthy of all of those things. So instead of trying to create how we get to those things, we have to kind of rewire and say, listen, if I do this paperclip business because I cannot stop talking about paperclips, all it takes is for the person who's really passionate about it. That was the person that the universe assigned to do this role. And therefore, if I step up to my role, it's a guarantee that the universe is going to give me the rewards. And why? Because that's its way of telling you, honey, you're on the right path, keep going. When it dries up your resources and dries up alignment and stops things from flowing well, it's also because it cares about you so much, because it wants to say, take another turn. So there's more people who are trying to be something, not because they love the thing, but because they think they need to do that thing to get them the other thing that they're wanting. But the other thing you're wanting will come to you anyway if you just honor that random small niche that no one is glorifying right now, and you'll be the person that ends up doing something incredible with it. And you know, our brains are so funny because we feel discouraged if we're the only person doing it, and then we also feel discouraged if everyone is doing it. So
we want to be nuanced and a little unique, but not so unique that we're by ourselves.
Yes.
It's even, you think about the internet and social media. I mean, like 10, 20 years ago, the career paths we both have wouldn't exist. And so think about what's going to happen in the next 10 to 20 years. It's moving even faster. It'll probably happen in the next 2 to 5 years, honestly, instead of the next 10 to 20, like even looking what's happening with AI and what that's going to shift. And so many people are really frightened by AI, but I think it's all about the mindset shift of opening that other door of, okay, yes, there could be some negative consequences to it. And are there things that this is helping to free up in me that I can spend that time doing something else? Can I utilize these tools for good, for benefit, to detox the things in my business I don't want to do? I just saw something came out on Instagram where AI can respond in your voice to DMs. That's so wild to me. I don't know if I fully am on board with that yet, but who knows? If that's where we're at right now, who knows where we could be in a few years? And I also have been getting this strong feeling about how people can cultivate an openness mindset, a growth mindset, because having that is going to get you through all the turbulation that may happen between now and this new paradigm. Because I feel like what sets people into their rock bottom is their rigidity. They're so stuck to one narrative. They're not open to a different possibility. They're not listening to the pings, or the intuition is not coming online. And if they can cultivate the whoa, okay, nothing is certain and I'm still safe. How do you hold those dual thoughts?
Safety now has to come from a different source than where we're used to it coming from. It is not going to come, spoiler alert, is not going to come from the world around us. It just isn't. And that's because the universe wants us to create this centeredness in self. So it is a gift, right? Everything is either a blessing or a blessing in disguise. And this time we're going through, and you're going to see between now and 2027, it's only going to get more, not only chaotic, but one thing happening after the other. So everything that we're relying on that isn't self for that safety will get tugged from us because it wants to teach us how to do that. And ultimately, again, it's one of the biggest concepts in all of human design. Probably the most important thing I would ever say, if you could ever get from human design, is that the mind is addicted to being in charge, but it's actually your authority, whether you're sacral or someone's emotional or whatever. The body knows how you should align. But the mind wants to know, how do I get to my purpose? How do I stay safe? How you stay safe is you allow the universe to bring a situation to your door that it decides is the perfectly crafted situation for you today. And then in that moment, you practice, how would I show up if I felt a little bit more safe than I felt yesterday? Let me practice feeling safe, or let me practice being calm or responsible, whatever your thing is. And so ultimately, we don't learn in isolation. We learn through life. And so this canvas that we're seeing of life around us right now is almost like the fast track. And that's why it's so good. And what I also want to say about the purpose thing is that because things are going to change so quickly, what I really want to tell people is that please listen to those small whispers of where your soul is making you go and do, because God forbid, I would want you to look back and be like, thank God I listened when I was kind of ahead of the curve, rather than wait until we're pushed. So right now, what I was saying about time, space, and matter collapsing, we are becoming more energy rather than matter. Matter is becoming less real and less physical anyway. And so we are better energy readers, right? What you were saying about the furniture, you can tell. If someone has this thing of like, oh, well, I want to create paper clips, but where's it going to get me? Where's it going to go? Where's it going to whatever? I want that person to be like, thank God I did that and trusted that the universe was going to give me all the beautiful rewards of living an aligned life anyway, because I don't want people to feel like in 6 months' time or 12 months' time, they were still too in the conditioning of what this world looks like, and it will already have expired, and they're still listening to we were still all listening to its old rules rather than believing that there are new rules that are coming online.
You've likely heard the benefits of getting your omega-3s in and your fatty acids, but a new study has come out about the first new nutritional deficiency in 75 years. It's called cellular fragility syndrome, and it's caused by a lack of an essential fatty acid that we didn't even know about. It's called C15. Many as 1 in 3 people worldwide have low levels of C15, and thus cellular fragility syndrome. Without this essential fatty acid, it creates age-related breakdown. The cells are not as strong, they start to break down sooner, it can impair metabolic, liver, and heart health. And that brings me to our latest partner on the podcast, Fatty 15. Fatty 15 has 3 times more cellular benefits than omega-3 or fish oil. It's patented, pure, oxidation-resistant C15 powder formula derived from plants and vegan-friendly. Free of flavors, filler, allergen, or preservative. The only ingredient is C15, so it's 100% pure. Now, if you're someone who cares about or thinks about the idea of longevity, this part is going to be really fascinating. So Fatty 15 was co-founded by Dr. Stephanie Van Watson. She was working with the U.S. Navy to continually improve the health and welfare of aging dolphins. And one of the studies that they ran is they noticed certain types of dolphins were living significantly longer lives than other dolphins. And they wanted to understand why. Why were they having better health conditions, less Alzheimer's, age-related diseases, and also their length of life was longer. And when they did this study, they found the number one predictor of their health was having healthy levels of C15. They then continued on a 20-year research journey, really understanding this on a deep level and how it impacts human cells as well. And it's in the exact same way. And what I think is fascinating is one of the natural ways that you can get C15 is through whole fats and whole milks. And so many people are vegan nowadays, or we're not getting that fat or milk from cows that are grazing grass. They're grazing corn. And when that happens, we don't get the high levels of C15, which is why I think so many people are deficient without even noticing it. Now, I started taking this about 2 months ago, and immediately within the first 3 days, I noticed a difference in my digestion, in my mental clarity, in my anxiety, and in my sleep. It impacts you in a whole myriad of different ways, but it helps support the cells. It's like if you were missing one vital nutrient and then you started getting it again, your whole system starts working better. So if you guys are interested in testing out C15 for yourself, you can get 15% off their 90-day subscription starter kit by going to fatty15.com/TBM or using code TBM at checkout for 15% off. Fatty 15 is on a mission to replenish your C15 levels and restore your long-term health. I want to go back to authority too, because I think that will help people figure out how to navigate those moments of when they hit that fork in the road and they have to make that decision. Like, am I going to listen to this, paying this idea, this intuition, even though it's scary, even though I'd be stepping through fear or doing something new or different? I have to take that bold choice and follow my gut on this. And how do people make those decisions? So if you could run through just a general overview of the different authority types, and when they download the app or go to myhumandesign.com, where can they find their authority?
So your authority is usually will be the second category that you'll see when you run your human design. And it really is, even though I was telling you before that human design goes so deep. It goes into dreams. It goes into animals. It goes into the origin of space. It goes into crystals of consciousness and reincarnation. There's all these things. The most important factor in all of human design is your strategy, which is how you use your energy type, and your authority, which is how you make decisions, how you know which is the right way to go in any point. And so basically your authority, like I was saying, is not in your mind. The mind is not meant to be in charge of anyone's life decisions because the mind is too conditioned, and the mind is actually supposed to be used to look at the outside world, to learn things, to get genius at things, to create stuff, to come up with solutions. So the mind is supposed to be our authority in the outside world. We have an inner authority, which is in our body, which is where the mystical force, the universe, whatever you want to call it, speaks to us. That's where we convene with the universe inside of us, or God inside of us, right? That's that point that is ineffable, where we just feel. And so you have many different kinds of authority. The most common in the world is emotional authority, because 51% of the world is emotional. And it's very difficult for emotional people to live in this world, because we live in a world which says, answer the email straight away. Knowing the answer straight away is like being in charge of your life, is knowing what you want, is kind of like professional, whatever. Emotional people, like me, we are people who, and you know, one of my teachers said that the difference between being emotional and non-emotional is bigger than the difference between men and women. So emotional people are people who wake up one morning and we could feel like we're wearing rose-colored glasses on and everything seems sweet and bright and amazing. And then another day you're in the blues, and it has nothing to do with what's going on in the world around you. Having said that, there's so many layers to being emotional, but in terms of decision making, what it means is that if you're in a good mood, if I'm in a good mood and Jessica, you say to me, like, do you want to go on this trip? I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, yes, I'm in, count me in. When that emotional wave has subsided and I'm back at neutral, I'm going to be like, oh my God, why did I say yes to that trip? I'm actually not that into it. Like, how do I feel about it? So what it really depends on with emotional authority is you wait until you're at a time where you're neutral. And then when you're neutral, you revisit the situation and you see how it makes you feel. What is so beautiful about emotional authority right now is that it is making sure that it's not about more shots, it's about more shots on target that get you further. That applies to everybody, but that's really a lesson of emotional authority, is like, just wait. It's the divine timing. You will be clear when you need to be clear. That's the time the person needs to receive that email, or that's the time the person is going to respond to you best, or whatever.
I coach my fiance on this all the time because he's emotional. Now, I'm not emotional, of course, we paired up. But when he gets like that lightning strike of like he's like, oh, I know how we should like structure this deal now. I'm going to go email them. And I'm like, wait for the wave to subside. If you still feel good about the deal, then send it. Like, I always give him like that moment of check and pause, because I can see when he's so excited, or if he's like down in the dumps, he's like, I'm going to, more reactive. And I'm like, no, just wait. And then usually what he responds to is somewhere in between.
I love that. And that's the neutral, right? So It's beautiful. In a nutshell, with your emotional authority, it genuinely is about how you feel when you think about it. Does it give you sweet emotion? And you need to be already starting at a cool, calm place to feel the difference of, oh, it's making me feel something nice when I think about it. And that's really difficult to do because, again, our mind is based on logic. It's like you can't just do it based on how you feel. There's all this conditioning, especially around women, like, oh, you're so emotional, whatever. This is not something you just get down pat and then you're done with it. It's like the more you do it, the more you need to do it. And the better the rewards get and the more magical and mystical life becomes, truly. The hardest step is when you are going from 0 to 1, when you don't believe it and then you see that it works. But then from 1 to 2 is only half that size, right? And then it gets more and more. So then you have sacral, which is you. And that's what you said it so perfectly, where you're like, I'm so drawn to this thing that I can't not think about it, talk about it, do it. And in a smaller way, it really is about having a visceral excitement to something. So whether it's a coffee or whether it's a job or whether it's a partner, it applies to everything. So the manual never changes. It's just that it's like that no-fail guidance system you can rely on to give you the thing that you need to get. And so for them, it's really difficult because it's like, you can't just do only the things that make you happy. You can't only just do the things that excite you. But actually, when you realize that the universe makes you excited about that thing because that's the thing it wants you to do. So you actually just have to listen and shush and not really be in charge of why you choose to say, gardening excites you and it's someone else's idea of hell. So that's really the way with the sacral is like, if something doesn't give me that visceral, like I sit up a little bit further in my chair or it makes my eyes perk up or whatever, it's that with generators. And again, it's over the mind, like, but surely you have to do certain things that you don't like, or certainly you have some duties that you don't enjoy. What I say to those people is, listen, if there's certain parts of the process that you don't love, ultimately it's getting you something that really is exciting to you. Of course, that's part of the learning. That's the devotion. That's the discipline. That's the sort of transformation period that we all go through in order to become a diamond. You have to spend the time in the refinement. But if it's heavy, if it's, I'm getting ego validation from telling myself I'm so good because I sacrifice myself, then that's when it's wrong. And you'll know immediately, because as a generator or a manifesting generator, if you have sacral authority, even if you're an emotional manifesting generator or generator, you will feel depleted, you will feel frustrated, and you will feel like so non-excited about life. You will just feel not the least juicy thing on the planet. And there's so many generators walking around and MGs walking around on the planet feeling like that because of that conditioning. Then we have splenic authority, and splenic authority is very much ping on ping on ping on ping. Go here, do this, do that. And it's one time, speaks to you that one time, and it never comes back again. So it's going to be like, go buy the almond milk. And then you'll be like, hold on, what was my intuition telling me? And it's like, I don't need to say it twice. Like, you heard me. You either do what I said or whatever. And I feel that that's the way with a lot of people where they're like, there's that meme of like, I asked for a sign and then I asked for a signy a sign. It's like splenic authority is only just going to be like, tell you once. And really, people with splenic authority need to learn to, firstly, if they can't trust the voice, and maybe this is a thing for ping, the way you talk about pings anyways, if you can't even act on it, at least honor that it showed up. Okay, I heard you. I'm too scared to do something about you now, but I'm not going to pretend you never came. I'll either write you down, or I'll, make a mental note or say thank you for coming. I'm not ready yet, but come back, visit me later. Like, whatever you need to do to just be in honoring or engagement of that universal conversation that's trying to come to you. And then you have ego authority. Those are really people who actually have to just go after the things they really want, like physical things they really want. Money, fame, impact, they'll all have different ones, but it's like you are driven to be driven by a shiny carrot, and it's actually healthy for you karmically to accept that your wants are so, like, you have to just be that kind of like entitled, a little bit more entitled than you've been taught to be. But with them, it's always about what is it that drives you, because maybe you have conditioning over what you're supposed to go after and actually really learning. For you, maybe your soul is here to make money. So you have to clear that shadow and say, it's okay for me to be driven by this. This is part of my authentic code, for example, where, I don't have the negative feelings around that or whatever. And also, it doesn't make me better than other people. A lot of people with ego have that, where it's like, oh, do I think people are going to look at me and think, who does she think she is, or any of that stuff. So that's a lot of work around the ego authority. Then you have sounding board authority. Those are people who, they basically almost need to say things out loud to another person, not to get advice, but to just hear the tone of how they feel around someone. So let's say, for example, you get your dream house and your G-center authority. If you were G-center authority and you'd be talking to me about it, I could, on paper, hear you say, I love it, it's great, blah, blah, blah. But I'd be like, well, you're saying it in that tone, though. You don't sound that happy about it. Whereas if you're like, I love it, oh my gosh, it's great, that would be so different than, yeah, it's great, it ticks all the boxes, da-da-da, yeah, I love it, yeah. That's really the thing with the G-center, is like they need to talk things out. They need to have that sounding board, not to hear what the other person is saying, but to almost hear how they feel about it when it comes out of their mouth, rather than how they think it sounds in their own head. And then you have mental authority. And this is one of the trickiest ones because it is mind, but it's not conditioned mind. It's this sort of third eye clarity of there are certain things that just make sense to you and you don't know why they make sense to you, where you're just like, oh, it seems like it's that. But then what happens with people with mental authority, that clarity will drop in straight away. Like the obvious choice will be clear, and then they will talk themselves out of the obvious choice because they are so mental. So they will over either logicize or fantasize or any of those faculties that live in the mind, like the substantiating of facts or the thinking of a million different options of all of that kind of thing will get in the way. So they almost need to always come back to what's the one that makes sense without me backing it up as to why it makes sense, and trusting that there's a reason why that makes sense to you because it was literally just dropped into your brain. And that's really only 2% of the population that have mental authority. You know, we haven't seen that enough. And then the last one is lunar authority, which is the authority for all reflectors. And all reflectors, they're what we call the not self in human design, which is the exact opposite of how you're supposed to be. Their not self is being very spontaneous and taking action on a whim. Whereas with them, the universe, your authority is lunar. So it's coming outside of you and it's taking place over the course of the moon, right? So if something is right for a reflector because they have so many conditionings that are coming to them every time they're around people, I could spend time with you if I was a reflector and be like, I want to be a podcast host and feel so emphatic about it. And then I go back to my house and I'm like, oh, I don't really care about it that much. So the voice that's going to keep revisiting you over time and is not going to leave and not going to budge is that slow kind of outside whisper that you've been getting that nudge a couple times now to know that it's really you and not something you picked up from just being in someone else's energy. That's when you listen. And again, that's a very difficult one to take because you have to wait.
I think this is so helpful on so many different levels. The first thing I thought of was responding to tests or triggers, especially the emotional authority, but like, how do you respond to those tests or triggers? How do you cement them in your mind of the story making behind them and what they mean to you and all of that? Like maybe give it a second, depending on what authority you are. Sometimes you're triggered because you just picked up someone else's emotional feeling and you just need to like squeeze your fist and get that anger out. And you don't actually have to go back to your childhood memory of anger or any of that. That's not the story. Just like let the feeling move over you somatically. And the other place is pings, obviously, and how they come through and how they connect to you. And it's so funny with sacral because it's yes, no. And I feel that I would say 99% of the time, but for some reason, when it comes to pleasure seeking, like booking a vacation or whatever, I feel like I go into the mental, even though that's not my authority, but I'll be like, I'll know where I want to go or how I want to feel. And then the mind comes in. It's like, well, this could be better. Is that the best option you could actually get? Or what if it's like this? Like maybe you should look up, a better deal on this website, or all the conditioning starts coming in. And recently what's been helping me a lot is just visualizing the sensation in the space without whatever the name of the place is. Just like, okay, how do you want to feel? Try to put everything else out. And then when I do that, it's like, oh, I can physically see myself in the place I'm supposed to go.
And I love that you said that because I think what's important is understanding with human design, there are areas where we are porous and open to picking up other people's stuff and places where we're not. So when you understand the stuff that is inherently yours to deal with, that you have to karmically deal with, let's say, for example, if someone has inherently in their chart a fear of becoming their highest, most powerful self, then okay, if something in the outside triggers it, then you still have to deal with it. You know what I mean? It's still yours. If you're emotional and you're in a bad mood and someone pisses you off, like you said, you can know what's yours and what's not yours, what you're picking up on and what you actually need to use as an opportunity to overcome, because every gift and every trait in human design has a positive expression of itself and a negative expression of itself. So for example, the people who have the fear of becoming their highest, most powerful self are here to embody their highest, most powerful self as part of what they actually need to do here. Like that's part of what their assignment was. And so a fear will often point you to the opposite of it as something that you need to become.
I love that. Even thinking about, we just did our challenge where people were taking like the biggest block that was coming up for them, like again, hitting them over the head again and again. And even just reframing that to like that block is actually what you're supposed to master in this lifetime. You really becoming almost the opposite of that block is what you're destined to do, especially if it's a block that's hit you so many times. Think of how much more excited you would be to step through that fear, to take that aligned action that's according to that opposite of that block. You'd be like, the universe is asking me to do this. This isn't even just about me. Like me doing this is like helping the community, is helping evolution, is helping humanity. I need to step through this. So know that when you're going through these hard things or these heavy blocks and all this stuff, you aren't alone. There is this whole support system behind you, like guiding you towards it.
Yeah, and it's so nice to remember that you can handle it because you are given it. Mm-hmm. And I think what's really important is to not look at the fact that we get given challenges as evidence of our weakness and our helplessness. Everyone has their little divine assignments, and yours just has a different flavor than everyone else's. We somehow think ours are worse, or we got lumped with the wrong one, or the whatever, we missed the memo. But it's exactly what you're saying, is like pointing you to the exact thing that you need to become. Honestly, that's why I think TBM is so powerful, because it helps you so practically get rid of those things or chip away at the stuff that has just gone over and over and over again. We don't have time for this anymore. 2027 is only 4 years away, like 3 years away. That's really not a lot of time, and we want to make sure that we are on the front foot.
How would you say someone who feels like they're stuck in their ways? I think this is going to be a huge theme coming up this November and through the rest of the year. This is going to be a big theme where people are going to be very entrenched in their perspective and their viewpoints, whatever that may be. And it may be triggering to be around someone who has a very opposite viewpoint and perspective from you. How do we start to allow space for a different way of thinking without losing our center? Because I think hearing someone else's perspective, it's so hard for people to do in that seat of neutrality, because if they compromise a little bit on theirs, it means everything is gone. That sense of safety is gone. Whatever they're attaching to as the safe or the right, they're, no right or wrong, but like in the right way of thinking, they've lost that center. What advice would you have for someone who's trying to shake that?
So you remember how, let's go back to the individual, the tribal, and the collective. So we all have a mix of both of all three in our charts. The tribal part of us wants to, because think about it, if you were in a tribe in the old days, literally the tribe next door was the enemy. And what distinguished your tribe to the tribe next door? You kind of dressed the same way, you had the same little emblem, you worshipped the same totem, you had similar rituals, and the guy next door wears a cloth that's a bit more red than yours, right? And so that signals the lack of safety. We are still carrying that hangover from similarity being safety and belonging. Because we're moving into this era of the individual, it's not like, oh, you're just going to feel it and that's that. No, we are the ones who are tasked with the changeover. So we need to practice being like, oh, hold on, it's only my mind that thinks I'm unsafe if someone thinks something completely different to me. Like, genuinely, if you look at the physicality of your life, does it physically make you less safe? Luckily, for most of the world, that means no. I'm obviously very aware that in some places in the world, it is a different way that they're operating under. But for us, if you're in a country that is safe, and if you're in a country that you have a roof over your head and those physical things are not at risk, it's an opportunity to dissolve that false belief that we all need to be on the same page and that's what's going to make us like each other, because the whole thing about human design is the science of differentiation. When we become more dehomogenized and we iterate so differently than what the current funnel of what a human being can be looks like, it's actually so much more fun to watch people be different than you, because you kind of experience vicariously so many different kinds of human and you can kind of enjoy it whilst you're with them. But when we're constantly trying to shunt each other to be similar, it's either abandoning ourselves or they're making them abandon themselves, and we're both meeting in the middle and no one's happy. So actually what we need to do is also feel like, okay, let me not need someone else to agree with me for me to feel safe. That's one of the things that's being ripped out from us, right? Is like, oh, if I'm not in my center, I need everyone to like me or agree with me for me to feel centered. Universe is now like, nuh-uh, honey, not going to give you that, because that was a false sense of safety in the first place. You need to practice having completely different priorities, views, options on the world, because you are one tiny little fraction of this universe's your localized focus of reality, right? And so actually, sometimes when I get too heavy in my thoughts, I'm like, I know nothing. I literally know nothing. Look at me thinking I know all the answers. Okay, could be right, could be wrong, don't know. And I actually caught myself the other day. Someone was telling me, this woman I met told me about this other woman. And she was like, do you know her? Do you know her? And it was someone who had not so positively crossed my path 5 years ago. And she was like, I want to do something with her and I want to work with her. Do you know her? Da, da, da. And I thought to myself, you know what? instead of going away in my mind and thinking, oh, she was so horrible, but also not being like, oh, you know what, maybe she's changed, maybe she's amazing, just be whatever about it. I was like, I don't know, who knows? Could be right, could be wrong. She could be great, she could be not great, and I don't need to decide. And there's so much freedom, I will say. I don't need to decide is so freeing. And I don't just mean in decisions we make. I just mean on the reality that we are so addicted to drawing from watching the movie. It's like we have to have the conclusion. We have to have the statement, the narrative. How about just could be not? I will say we have a podcast episode called Not Everyone is Designed to Speak Their Opinions. And it's all about how there are certain people in their human design. If you have, for example, a defined throat and it's connected to your mind, that's a person who's literally supposed to speak their mind. And as a society, we've been so conditioned that the only way we can add value is by talking about our opinions. So actually learning how you add value is also very freeing, because some people, for example, are supposed to speak about their feelings, their emotions, their creativity. Some people are supposed to speak about guidance or all sorts of different things. And some people are better off working with their hands and not speaking so much, right? So it's a very interesting, nuanced thing because of how we can all deal with how we add value and where we let the sort of glorification of opinions come into us.
That's so interesting because I definitely have the connection. I have an open crown but closed throat, so I'm supposed to speak, I guess. But I think what's interesting is even 5 years ago, I'd be like, oh, but like, what do I have to say? And that's that conditioning to prepare me to be like, hello, you're supposed to be doing this. You need to get more comfortable doing this. It's always the opposite medicine. What you're afraid of doing is actually the thing that you are going to be excelling in the most, and vice versa. If you're like overly confident in one space, but things are drying up, or maybe you're oversharing and blah, 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 and there's that resistance where it's combative, maybe you're supposed to give and be of service in a different route too.
100%. And that's where you're knowing your design, what you have inherently, what you came here born with, is what you're supposed to double down on. And then you're not supposed to try to be anything else because that's someone else's job. Don't be taking up other people's lanes. That's also selfish, right? And we all want our soul and our surface on the same page, like sending the same message, so we're not mixed messaging to the universe about who we are and mixed messaging to people. When you advertise yourself correctly, your essence, that's when people respond to you the best. So you could be doing anything and people will respond to you so well because you're in clear communication of what you are, who you are, what you have to offer in every area of life.
By now, you're starting to get the feel for TBM. Maybe you've heard about our workshops and you're interested in manifestation, but you just don't have the time or energy to sit down and do self-help work. We totally get it. In fact, that's why we created the Daily Practice, which is our massive library of self-hypnosis tracks that you can do anytime without having to jump into a workshop. We call these tracks our Deep Imaginings, or DIs. DIs are different than normal meditations because we designed them using a combination of self-hypnosis techniques, deep theta waves, EMDR-informed tools, and somatic experiencing. A fully loaded formula that is scientifically proven to help you clear your blocks and triggers on a subconscious level, giving you the power to actually create new neural pathways in your brain. So if your boss pisses you off, use our Trigger DI. If you want to feel magnetic before a party or an important meeting, use the Magnetic Self DI. If you're feeling anxious or down on yourself or you need help making a decision, we've got a DI for all of these scenarios and more. You can get full access to the Daily Practice inside the Pathway membership, where you'll also get unlimited access to every workshop, tool, and offering from TBM. The tools in the Pathway membership will support you year-round, whether you're in the worst, a rock bottom, or second worst, a rut, or feeling good and you want to keep the magnetism going. In the Pathway, you'll effectively learn how to become your own manifestation coach, all for less than $1 a day. So even if you're not ready to start a workshop, join the Pathway and start rewriting your neural pathways now to create magnetism. Work through your triggers and get closer to your authentic magnetic self in order to manifest. Use our special code MAGNETIC, all caps, MAGNETIC, to receive $20 off your first TBM purchase. Again, that's all caps, MAGNETIC. Now back to the episode.
with people playing small, could they see that as a place where they're not almost in integrity? Could they start to see those moments where they're hiding, where they're not stepping through that fear, just so they can start to program themselves like, oh, that was the option for me to step into my dharma, into the evolutionary path?
Absolutely. The staying small and the hiding, it's still ego. It's just the inverse ego of having a self-inflated thinking you're amazing, whatever. It's still keeping you away from living your path and living like the expression of the divine that you are. So anything that, whether you call it ego, you call it the inner opponent, whatever you want to call it, that thing is anything that's going to keep you away from just doing that. And so it can catch you on the other side too, where you maybe think that's more virtuous or whatever. There's so many layers in human design. If you know, for example, like if you're a manifestor, you could easily be hiding because that's something that manifestors do a lot. Or, you know, you could be staying small, especially if you're a manifesting generator and you have such a big energy and you're so dynamic and diverse. And so many of them are like, I feel like the complete opposite of that. So there's a lot of nuances, but for sure what you're saying is bang on, where it's the exact opposite of what you need to become.
And then speak a little bit about the red nails concept. The second you said that, I was like, I need to get long fingernails. I need to go get like tips on because I'm so not that person. I'm like, keep it short, minimal, no polish, very short polish. And then I was like, if I have long fingernails, I'll feel like I'm trying on a different identity. And maybe that's the thing that I need to kind of like shake the snow globe. So what's your theory on this?
So basically, you know how I was saying to you about, okay, I didn't know all the different ways that you could go and get a coffee, or the different ways that if I was in your head for a day, what would life as a human be like? Without even my job, my partner, my whatever, just like living in your skin and your thoughts. And so what most of us, when I was saying we become so crusty in our things, we think that it's the only way. And then we have an identity that gets built around that. Therefore, one of the best ways to decrustify, for want of a better word, your inside thoughts and your narratives that you built around yourself and your reality is to literally just create some pattern interrupts. And they don't have to be ones that you're making a change about forever. But even, for example, painting your nails red will give you this pattern interrupt where every time you look at your nails, and it's not, you know, the normal Jessica gets French manicure gel and you've painted your nails red, it's just going to shake you a little bit to be like, oh, there's different ways of being human in micro ways. And so like, let me just try on all the different avenues and flavors of human that there are in this world. And the billions and billions of different options that layer upon every single thing I do in the day. Can you imagine the probability tree of that is just infinite? It's mind-blowing. And so I just encourage people, if there's something that I've always done this, just what is the thing you've always done? And then just do it in a slightly different way. Even if it janks you, you can always go back, but it's more about creating the pattern interrupt. So for example, I'm getting on a plane tomorrow. I'm like, I always wear sweatpants. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to practice being a person who like dresses up well for the plane. If I hate it, I can go back, but let's just see what it's like to be that kind of human being. And just that creates that flexibility and that openness that the universe really loves to work with us on.
I think that's so helpful too if you're in a state where you're not getting a lot of pings or intuition, you're sitting in a bit of fear, you're not taking a lot of aligned action. What is one small thing that you can do to almost shift your identity of who you are? Because it's like, wow, if I'm that person that gets that red nail, maybe I'm also the person who can ask for that raise at work, or maybe I can set that boundary with that person. Like it shifts what is possible for you. It's almost like a much gentler, more positive rock bottom, where the rock bottom is like, we're going to pull away the thing from you and then you have to rebuild your identity. Let's try on a different outfit so your identity concept of who you are shifts. And it's so funny because even when I was thinking about that, and even in the smallest example of nails, I was like, oh, like I identify girls who have long nails as like more like the beauty influencers and people that really love fashion. And that's not me. And then the second I said that, I was like, oh, I've told myself that's not me. But like, what if I try it on for a day? It might not be me, but at least it will get me thinking outside that I'm in some box and I can't step into another box.
And it comes back to that. It's not doing the thing, it's the meaning that we assign to what that thing is, you know? So it's like, what do you associate with those red nails? And can you try that on? And it also reminds us that we can't do it just by thinking. It's the trying it on, it's the painting on the canvas of life that we get that feedback of this is working, this feels more you. You might be surprised and actually end up doing something that was way more you than you ever even conceived of just because you did it differently that one day. It's also just a funner way to play with life because, when you're talking about the safety and security, you can kind of realize that you don't have to stay so rigid and tight to feel safe. And actually you realize that you feel safe playing more and you're still fine. Then you realize you didn't need that rigidity at all to have that safety sourced from within.
I even love how you talk about workouts. You go online and it's like, well, the only way to get a healthy body is to do Pilates or is to do this workout class or this HIIT thing or cut calories this way. But you're like, my body loves to get up and dance. I'm just going to have a dance party. And that's actually, I've been in the best shape ever. And that's all I'm doing. How do we go back to our inner authority? How do we go back to our inner self and say, like, what feels good to me now that it might not match up with what the outside world reflects as what to do?
Yeah, the hard part is the amount of questioning yourself that you do, because it does happen. And you're like, what if I get this all wrong and this and that? And I think it's okay to build in guardrails. Like, okay, I'm going to start doing my dancing. And you know what? If I feel terrible, I can go back to the old one. Like, it's there. It's already crossed it. It's already engraved in my inner self. But then it comes back to emotional authority. Like, for a fact, what's going to be best for me is the thing that makes me the happiest. And so I'm on this path of, I've never seen anyone do it this way. There's no manual that tells me this is going to work. And spoiler, there is no manual that tells any of us it's going to work. So you can either pretend that it doesn't work that way, or you can acknowledge that is how life is. And you are the pioneer of your own life path, and no one ever else is going to tell you it's going to work. No one can give you guarantees. No one's going to walk it before you or after you. So you have to be the one who says, with this one life that I get given, am I going to care about this gift enough that I just want to give it a go? Because I may as well. What is there? And a workout, what's the biggest there is to lose? Okay, I burn out my adrenals a little bit, or I'll gain a bit, I don't know, like whatever the fear is of trying a new workout. But I know that for a fact, I trust that my divine connection tells me, guides me on where to go if something is making me happy. And I'm wise enough now sometimes to know that it's not my job to question why it's making me do this for now. And because I'm also inconsistent in human design, I know that might change any minute. And I'm fine with that too.
I love it. Such wisdom. I think you are just such a channel, Jenna. Like everything you share, I'm just like, oh my gosh, spot on, so on it, so good. Thank you for everything. Where can people learn more, connect with you more, check out the app? Highly recommend, guys. Feel like I'm in there every other day looking up something.
Thank you. So the app is called My Human Design. It's everything. It gives you a full chart reading read to you by me. You can look up all your friends and family, get their readings as well. We now have forums in there. I do these monthly new paradigm deep dive workshops. I answer a user question every single day. So people submit questions and I answer them. There's a bunch of stuff going on in there. And then there's also, we are my.humandesign on Instagram, and I'm Jenna Zoe on Instagram, and myhumandesign.com as well for deeper courses if you want to get certified in human design, take my online trainings, all that sort of good stuff.
So cool. One last thing, this kept coming to me and I forgot to ask. What would be one message you think that the collective or the expanded podcast community feeling into it might need to know for the next 6 months of the year? This closing out of 2024, is there anything that pops in that feels might be helpful?
If you see every day as a blessing for you to make yourself proud, and that opening is going to be there somewhere, A, you'll spot that opportunity way more. B, you will like yourself more. You'll be more proud of yourself, and therefore you'll love yourself more. And you will feel a much calmer, stronger center so that nothing rocks you, because things will rock us. But you'll have practiced it enough to know that it's in your movie because it's here to make you become a version of yourself that you're proud to be.
That's so funny you say proud too, because Daniel and I at night typically he'll be like, okay, what's 3 things you're grateful for? But about a month ago, he switched it and said, what's one thing you're proud of yourself for? The gratitude is good, but I feel like sometimes it hits me in a good way. And sometimes I'm just like, okay, let me just, pick random things. But the proud one hits me every time, because some days I'm like, I really got to think on this one. What am I proud of? And then other days I'm like, oh yeah, I did do that. I'm so proud. So I think that is such a key hack, especially in building your self-worth.
Absolutely, because I know in times when I was not as holding myself up to such a high standard in life, I didn't think much of myself at all. I could obviously get there from an understanding of we're all worthy, but unless I actually saw the evidence of me holding myself to actually accountable, like to bring it out of myself, then you have that sort of backup. And so therefore, that is my mantra every day, is make yourself proud every day. And if you're in integrity and you're doing things with kindness and you're getting out of your own way, you're working on your consciousness just a little bit more, not even getting it perfect, but you just can't get it wrong.
So good. Thank you, Jenna.
Thank you so much.
I hope you all enjoyed that episode as much as we did. And if you're starting to get a feel for this to be magnetic manifestation process, but aren't completely sold yet, let me point you to some of our free offerings. You can check out the expanded podcast episode called How to Manifest Anything You Desire, where Lacey, the founder, and I break down exactly what this process is all about. You can check out The Motivation, which is our testimonial library with thousands of testimonials of people who have manifested wild things using this process. Or you can check out our free mini workshop to find out why you're not manifesting and listen to one of our proprietary deep imagining audios, where it's going to help you drop into your theta state and overwrite low self-worth limiting beliefs. Enjoy! We'll see you next week.